the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Today, I am lucky enough to have with me Ian Kirkpatrick. Ian, welcome to the Florida Writer Podcast.
Thank you so much, Allison. I'm so happy to be here, and I appreciate the time.
Can you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Well, it might not take 60 seconds, but I am an author of sci-fi. I usually say speculative because I do a lot of horror, I do a lot of mystical elements, and satire because everything is ridiculous, and that's what I write about. I also do YouTube videos about writing or reading books or all of that, and I actually now run a show called The Loin Stream where we read books together like a book club and then talk about them as we go. So that's everything that I do about writing.
All right, I'm going to ask about the book club because that's super cool. So do you meet on like Zoom or YouTube or something fancy or?
Yep. So Friday nights at 8:15 p.m. Eastern, I open a live stream on YouTube and I've got a book open. We're starting a cyberpunk called The Low End Kid by Robert Crone. And we're starting that book actually tonight, which I don't know when this will be, but then I start reading and we've got a live stream of commenters and we just talk about the book as we go. We talk about the characters. And if it's really, really bad, we'll talk about some of the weaknesses and some of the strengths. And a lot of them are writers. So we analyze the work as we go and what works and what doesn't.
Are you reading short stories versus novels?
Novels right now. I just started this about 2 months ago and we just finished our first novel after about 2 months. And, I don't know if you'll be able to see this in the podcast, but this is the book for the next one. So
it's a very thick book.
It's thick.
They won't be able to see it, but it is a very thick book. All right. So it's like a writer's group, except for the writer's not there.
Yeah.
That's like really cool because then you could really get into the nitty gritty of what they do well, what they don't do well, and you can analyze it as if you're at literature.
Yeah, and then it also I like to do indie authors, especially because it's always hard to market out indie authors or self-pub authors. So if you feel confident, I just come to you if you're marketing it and I say, hey, can I do this? And then we just read and it gets a way to show people your book. More people talk about it. Hopefully they all leave reviews because I say, here's the book link to go buy it and also leave reviews if you enjoy this. And, hopefully spreading the love a little more.
So the author is in the room.
No, the author doesn't have to be. The last book, the author was not in the room, fortunately, because we were making fun of that book a lot.
I love it. Oh my goodness. That sounds like a lot of fun. I think that's right up my alley. I might have to join you one night.
That's how it ended up as the Loin Stream. This used to just be a live stream, but the last book was sold to us as a steampunk adventure. And there was a lot of heated loins going on. Very steamy characters. In inappropriate times. So it changed to Loin Stream, and now after 2 months, we're stuck with that title.
Yeah, but it makes you stand out a little bit more, and it's memorable.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, perfect. So tell me about what you write.
So like I just said, I write satire and speculative fiction. Right now, my first book that just debuted last year is a satire that was inspired by a board game. So it's kind of zany, as you might expect. And specifically, I really I stick with speculative because speculative allows you to have little tiny magical fantasism in your stuff or really big elements. So say in Dead End Drive, something that's really fantastical about it, well, one of the characters is basically a Scottish urban legend that everyone chased him out of the country because he destroyed everything without knowing it. But then the house also takes on its own character in the murdering spree of the place. It personifies the house. But if you're not doing speculative, then you can't really have those fantastical elements to the non-fantastical things.
So it's not a haunted house. It's more that the house becomes a character and has its own arc.
It ends up having its own relationships with different characters in the story. So one of the characters in the story is an illegitimate child of the old housekeeper. And that illegitimate child was actually the love child with the person that she actually loves but couldn't be with for societal reasons. And they were a mixed race couple, but they got together before 1965, which was illegal in the United States. So because of social pressures of him also being a servant and her being rich, they couldn't be together. They still had this love child that she could never acknowledge because of her social standing. But as you read the book, you see that the house actually favors that woman or that child of hers. And that child of hers knows the house more intimately than anybody else. So it kind of takes on its own personification in a way.
So how do you develop that plot line?
With the storyline. So the storyline for Dead End Drive specifically, like I said, it came from a board game. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the board game 13 Dead End Drive by Milton Bradley, but it came out in 1993. And the whole board game is you've got 12 characters and the old lady that owns the estate dies. And then everybody's job is to just kill everybody else to be the last person standing to get the money. So then I just took that and I made my own characters for all of these typical mansion stereotypes: the stylist, the tennis pro, the butler, the maid, the gardener. And I just created that whole story from just that premise.
I love that you can find plot in inspiration anywhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you could look at Candyland and do the same thing. You've got a story there, an entire world that you could build around, build something new from it. And then you have to figure out what those characters are that you're starting with, what their goal actually is. Because obviously in a board game, you're moving pieces. There's not a story.
So how did you get started writing?
I have always been writing. I can remember way back when I was homeschooled, and our first writing assignment was we had to create a title and then make a short story based on that title. And my title was Sapphire the Blue Pony. And so I wrote that story, and after I'd written that first story, I couldn't stop writing. So I was finding reasons to write however I could in all of my free time. And so then growing up in high school and in college, I spent all of my free time just writing and writing. And it wasn't until the tail end of college that I actually discovered, oh, I can write stuff for more than just for fun. For some reason that had never hit me, but I didn't do anything in college except go to college and write. And
did you major in journalism or?
Oh no, I majored in theater actually. So you'll find a lot of that in the way that I write. The characters have very conversational style dialogue. There is a lot more dialogue. Dead End Drive specifically starts out with 12 characters all at the top, kind of like, and then There Were None by Agatha Christie. She introduces all of the characters that get to the mansion, and then the stuff starts happening. And so you'll see a lot of that theatricalness happen in my stories specifically. And recently, Dead End Drive actually got an audiobook, and out of the 11 reviews it's gotten so far, 4 of them mentioned how easy it is to picture it as a movie. So I'm a very visual writer.
Well, that's great. Do you like to use a lot of the descriptions? How do you just pepper those in that it doesn't overwhelm the storyline or the plot?
That took so much time to learn how to do, I swear. There was a whole section of Dead End Drive that specifically detailed every little detail on a suit of armor for like a page and a half, because my professors were like, you need to have more description in here. And then I overboarded it and had to pull it back. But the way that it really stood out to me is you say things that would stand out for that character to notice, or that paint the personality of the room that they're in. So like I mentioned, Dead End Drive, the house sort of personifies in a way. And you'll walk into the library, as mentioned at a point, and it will describe the couch and the pictures that go between obscure artist and well-known artist, and grotesque images and beautiful images to give that juxtaposition of just what this house represents. And the same with, it mentions skylight pictures that are framed in the ceiling that show distorted versions of biblical stories. That again, it has that context or that contrast of the good and the evil. But I don't go into heavy description of any of them. I just give enough that you get the picture of what you're looking at. And that's kind of the hard thing to learn how to balance.
How many books do you have under your belt?
Currently, I have one that's published and the second one being published later this year.
So you're actively working on your platform.
Yes.
How is that going?
Quite slowly. I've had my YouTube channel actively moving for maybe 2 years. And that's doing 1 to 2 videos a week. And I'm only just over 400 subscribers now on that. So that takes some time. I'm not working on Twitter because I found Twitter to be way too toxic an environment. It didn't seem like those transferred to any actual connections with people anyway. but I've had a lot of luck on minds.com, and there's a great writing community over there.
I actually don't know minds.com.
They're most of the loin streamers right now too, because that's where I talk about the loin stream. But there's an excellent writing community over there. They're all very supportive. A lot of science fiction and fantasy writers, but I feel like that's pretty typical.
Is it a Facebook or?
It's kind of a mixture of Facebook and Twitter. You have a longer message range to do it in, and you get paid in crypto for your activity. And then you can use that crypto that you get to start boosting posts. So then your posts go on to people who don't know you, which gives you more exposure.
Well, that is something new. I didn't know. I'm going to have to go research that. You have a website.
Steakhousebooks.com.
Steakhousebooks.com. All right. So how'd you come up with the name?
So the name, I just wanted the puns. I was going to start a publishing company because I want to change kind of the way that books are being published right now. We see a lot of fear in the main big five of taking a chance on fresh ideas, new books. They want to keep the sure things, the big names like Stephen King, but they don't really want to take any risks. And so with Steakhouse Books, that was just the MO for starting the program, but I was like, I need a really good name. And one night I was laying in bed and I was like, Steakhouse. If it was called the Steakhouse, I could say we have the best hooks because you keep meat on hooks. And then from there, I was like, for stories from medium or from rare to well done. And the puns just kept coming in for steak. And then I started thinking about how branding could work. And I'm sure that you might have taken a look at my media kit where it's just got steak all over it. And my future goals are to do like a magazine, a collection, to have other authors submit stuff and then do a short story collection, which would be called Raw. And the cover would always be raw meat. And it was just like thing after thing for branding just came in and I couldn't not.
That's very fun. I agree with you there. I did my own, when I was publishing, I did 3 dog tales because I happened to have 3 dogs at the time. And so it was TALES, 3 dog tales. And I liked that one. I thought that was fun.
Very nice. Dog tales also make you think of having fun because they're wagging their tails, having a good time. And that's a lot of what I think we need a lot more of in books and reading and publishing. Let's just have fun and tell stories again.
Yes, have fun, tell stories. That's the way it should be. How long do you spend writing a book?
It really, really depends. With Dead End Drive, I spent more than 10 years working on that book. I started it before I even started undergrad, or at the beginning of undergrad, I feel like. And it actually, I posted it online to get ideas for what to do with it before I tried to write a 30-minute stage play for it called Show Me the Money. And then near the end of my undergrad, I actually started focusing on it as a book. And I had maybe 4 chapters, and that's what I applied to graduate school for. And I did it in graduate school mostly. But then after graduate school in 2016, I continued to work on it until I published it last year. So that one took me a very long time, but I was also learning a lot of tools of the trade. With my more recent book, Bleed More, Body More, coming out in October, it took less than 6 months to go from the first draft to the revisioned, completely edited draft that it is now. And it was the 6th book that I've actually written. It's not the 6th one being published, but it's the 6th one written. And
that gives you a lot of time to start really developing your own voice.
Yeah. I would say a good amount to guesstimate. For a first draft, it probably takes me between 3 to 5 months to just do a first draft. And then depending on how well that came out, then the revisions will be a lot easier.
Do you have a technique for your revisions?
I rewrite the whole thing. I have the old document on one side and I have a new document on the other side, and I just basically start rewriting it. And so then if I get to a paragraph where I want something to change, or a behavior changed, or a mood changed in the character because it's not appropriate over here, then I'm basically doing a first draft again inside of that second draft. And then I just keep copying once it picks up again, and I change stuff like that as I go.
And you hand type this, or do you copy paste?
I hand type all of it. The second draft is completely typed again. And then when I get to the bottom of that, if I feel like I'm comfortable with it, then I won't do another type and I'll start doing line edits. But if I feel like it's not quite there and I still have plot issues that I need to work out, then I'll retype it again, referencing my second revision.
That's incredible. I've not heard of someone using that technique before. It makes a lot of sense. I imagine it's how people did it 100 years ago before we even had keyboards. Typewriters were a little hard to find. People would handwrite their drafts. They'd handwrite it in a notebook, then they'd type it on a typewriter, and then they'd have to mail it to somebody.
Mm-hmm. So I don't go that far. I was gonna say, and I was revising probably the fourth book that I've written earlier this month, and chapter 4 just completely changed because I needed to change the interactions between every character in that scene. It was just the first draft I just try to write without stopping and telling myself to edit it, because I don't know where a story's going to go until I get to the end. And then once I know everything, then I can go back and actually start writing toward intentions, because I'm not a plotter in the least. I get my I break every story down into 3 acts, and that's it. And then I get my 3 major bullet points of what needs to happen. And so once I've got my 3 major bullet points, one for each act, I figure out who my main character is and where they're starting. And then their job is to get from that starting point to the first bullet point. And then once they get to the first bullet point, well, now that's going to be the close of Act 1. And so now our next goal is Act 2, the end of Act 2. So whatever action happens at the end of that bullet point should be guiding us into the next thing that they have to do to move forward, the next inciting incident, which will guide us toward the next climactic point.
I really like that technique. That works really well because it's so simple.
Yeah.
You just break it down into 3, and then you break it into 3, and you just work from point to point. With the biggest difference is what your inciting incidents are. Like, they are bold in front of you.
Not necessarily. When I'm starting, I don't necessarily know. I only know the first one. And then I learn what my inciting incidents are for the next act once I get closer to them. So with Bleed More, Body More, I knew when I started that one, this isn't going to spoil anything because it's at the beginning of the book, is the character goes to a park to pick up her friend's car because he called in late. She works at a mechanic. So he's like, hey, can you come get my car? She goes. She can't find him. That's the inciting incident for Act 1. So now if I'm going to do a bullet point for Act 1's climactic moment, well, it's not even related to that. My goal at that point was she needs to reach the ghost town that's underneath the city. So it's not even this major happening. It's just a shift in her life. And so how do I get her from her friend is missing to finding the ghost town? And so every chapter from that beginning to that point should be moving her forward in the story. Now, while I'm trying to get her to the ghost town, she obviously has the personal objective of, I need to find my friend. So where all is she going to look for her friend, and what's getting in the way of her looking for her friend? And then she eventually gets to the ghost town. Then once she gets to the ghost town, we've now hit the end of Act 1 into Act 2. Well, what just changed? The inciting incident is now she's in the ghost town and she needs to get out. So each of these things leads to the next.
That works well, it sounds like.
It does for me. I can't say for anybody else.
Well, that's what it's all about, is finding the techniques that work for us. Ian Kirkpatrick, this has been a great interview. How can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on minds.com at Kirkpatticake. That is KirkpattieCake. I'm also Kirkpatticake on YouTube, which is where we do the loin streams. I'm also starting a pitch fit on there, pitch your books. And I would like to read people's pitches to audiences so more readers can find more authors. And I have a monthly writing contest over there of here's a prompt, write a story, and I read it so we can all just celebrate being writers. So Kirkpatticake pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Minds, YouTube, and steakhousebooks.com.
Are we ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Yes.
The first one, who would play you in a blockbuster movie?
Oh, gosh. As a theater student, I do not know actors very well at all.
Well, we could go with a newbie. Give somebody fresh a chance.
There we go. Cast somebody that is, yes. Let's go with somebody brand new.
That fits your personality, I think, with the idea of giving new authors a chance. I like it. What's the most beautiful place you've ever seen?
I actually think Alaska was gorgeous. And leaving my front door, there were mountains right in my backyard, right up close. I was just at the foot of them. And like the sunsets and the sunrises are so different up there than down here. But I think that's true. I think that's true in every state, as you get a different view of the sky.
I would agree with you. So were the sunrises and sunsets really long?
It depended on if it was winter or if it was summer.
Wow, okay.
But we had the mountains right there, and then in the midst of summer, they were so covered in green, and then in the middle of winter, or not even by October, because I was in Anchorage, they were blanketed in white. But seeing them completely in green, or going down to the inlet and seeing the sleeping lady right there downtown, it was just very nice.
Last question. What's the strangest thing in your refrigerator?
It might be cashew butter.
Cashew butter. Awesome.
It's very oily on the top.
It's great for smoothies, right? Or add some jelly and put it on bread.
Oh yeah, we kind of put it in there because it's very watery. And so we needed it to firm up some.
A little protein, little flavor. Ian Kirkpatrick, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison. It's been a wonderful talk.
Yes, and there's a squeaky toy in the background. Is that a little dog?
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm all for little dogs. I'm all for big dogs. Any type of dog, I'm all good with.
I'm on board with you there.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. Boom! We're all done. Ian Kirkpatrick is a speculative and dark comedy author with interesting credentials. An MFA in creative writing from the University of Tampa and a BA in theater from the University of Alaska Anchorage. She lived in a high desert, the frozen tundra, and the subtropics, so she's got most of the extreme climates covered. The things she writes can be dramatically different as the places she's lived, though she tends toward black comedy, satire, and different forms of speculative fiction. She's written novels, short stories, stage plays, and screenplays. For more information about Ian, visit her website at steakhousebooks.com. Join us for the 20th Annual Florida Writers Conference, October 14th through 17th, 2021. The Youth Conference is October 16th, 2021 in Orlando, Florida. See you there. For more information, visit floridawriters.org.